government would probably have to step in as a partner, right? We can't do it alone and neither can the government. They are again able to create islands of excellence, but the scalability of their interventions is very questionable. Government has increased its expenditure by about 11% on education. It is still a far cry that you can give a tablet or a phone in every hand. Let the private sector just give a business model, help with some kind of business advisory and be a facilitator. It can never be just government or CSR or private sector. I think it's the convergence of all the stakeholders, and that's when you can create scalable impact.
Welcome back to Impact Insights, talk show about causes and effects. So let's continue from where we left off last week, where Amit discussed the importance of early education and skilling, as well as the key challenges faced by the underprivileged when it comes to this sector. Today, we will focus on the CSR initiatives in this space and solutions to divert funds in the right direction to get maximum impact. Education is an area that gets the maximum allocation from the corporates under their CSR activities in India. However, there is a mismatch between the need and the spend. The education sector received around 40% of the total CSR budget in financial year 1920, which is around 9,500 crores of rupees. Credit should be given to corporates for prioritizing education and spending significant amounts on it. At the same time, it should be highlighted that the states getting the maximum benefit of the CSR budget, like Maharashtra, Gujarat, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu, are not the ones with the worst literacy rate. This shows there is something amiss in the CSR planning. The present scenario demands not just attention, but a strategic and innovative intervention in the sector by CSR players. So Amit, like I said, it's a big chunk of total money spent. Do you think it is creating as much impact? And also, what can be possible solutions to improve the state of affairs? And where should the funds be diverted to bring the desired outcome?
No, I think that's a very important point. And to be fair, if one looks at, the contribution of CSR to education, skill development, you're right. It probably occupies the lion's share of, the total CSR commitment. It also seems to be the most obvious intervention that, companies can get into. And without a doubt, that is the most important need also. On the other hand, they also do. They also sponsor a lot of impact evaluation, etc., to capture, what have been the outcomes, right? That's where one would need a more impartial and unbiased assessment of what the real outcome has actually been in that community, right? For instance, if it's a legal obligation to spend 2% of your profits, then somewhere they should also be, legally obligated to be more transparent about, the audits of these schools, etc. They could be done by third-party evaluators. And a lot of the CSR funding could actually be really measured. The second thing is that the impact of these interventions, you rightly pointed out, is very localized, right? And by default, because most of the industries are in the industrialized states continue to get a larger share of those investments. So the UPs and Bihars are obviously at a disadvantage. And the third thing I would say is that the not-for-profits, again, one doesn't have anything against them. They are doing great work. They are able to work with the grassroots communities. The only challenge with working with not-for-profits is often they are able to create islands of excellence, but the scalability of their interventions is very questionable. How much are they able to standardize that across a larger geography or across multiple states? So their capacities are limited, right? An NGO, if it gets fully involved in, say, one district or one location or one state, chances are they do not have adequate capacity to provide support in any other part of the country. So that's where and then that will bring me to my larger point that the way forward has to be looking at viable private sector solutions. I've clearly said that the government, if you look at Government of India's commitment to education, if you just look at this budget that they announced, prima facie looks like a good movement, northward movement. Government has increased its expenditure by about 11% on education. We've crossed a psychological barrier of more than 1 lakh crores being committed to education, but it's still far from the 6% of GDP that was expected over a period of time. One has to make that journey if the NEP has to be implemented, right? Everyone agrees that the NEP as a vision document, as a policy document, was perhaps the most robust policy document one has seen in decades. And obviously, it came out through a very collaborative process. It actually highlighted all the key problems and it came up with very, very pragmatic solutions. But if you look at this budget, a lot of experts are also saying that the budget is not in sync with, the objectives of the NEP. I mean, many of the things that we have said we will promote, we've actually cut back on them. And if I were to just give you two examples, teacher training had a budget for 250 crores in the previous budget. That's been surprisingly brought down to about 125 crores. Whereas we all know that, with the transition to digital learning, teachers today require a greater intervention on continuous professional development and all of that. Another area, which is digital learning, which should have been probably the main focus. There was some talk about creating TV channels, etc. People are not very convinced about how that will solve the digital divide problem. But the PM e-Vidya scheme again has seen a massive cut down from some 650 odd crores to 420 crores. The budget has to some extent disappointed on that end, but yes, there are positives. If you look at the whole plan to upgrade Anganwadis, they've announced a plan 2.5 lakhs, which is very appreciable, and I think that's where it all has to begin. A lot of those resources have to be invested there, right? So this is apart from the funding aspect of it. You have to find ways of working closely with the private sector to solve some of these problems. There are organizations today who have a serious intent to solve some of these problems through technology. But again, there the government would probably have to step in as a partner, right? We can't do it alone and neither can the government. So, there are a number of areas where, we are trying to help up with innovative concepts. And if you just look around digital infrastructure, there are ideas that we've taken to the government where we are saying that your rural areas still have very poor digital access. It is still a far cry that you can give a tablet or a phone in every hand, particularly rural children. Right. So why not create some kind of multi-purpose computer centers, which could possibly by day be used for children to attend classes. It could be used by government officials and teachers for their training. It could be used for conducting recruitment board exams, right? And you can even look at creating an entrepreneurship model around it. Get a person from the village or probably get some kind of a cooperative from the village to actually manage these facilities. So let the private sector just give a business model, help with some kind of business advisory and be a facilitator. The second area that, we espouse very strongly is that teacher training is perhaps one of the most fundamental interventions that you can make to improve the quality of education, particularly for government teachers. Can you enable them to do more, to be more? And it can be through online teacher training. We're doing a lot of it across the country. We're working with many states. In Assam, we are doing teacher training for close to about 800 teachers. And the plan is maybe to take it to 8,000 next, once the results that come out. Because we felt that if you're able to give a standardized curriculum to teachers, they know exactly what to expect. Some of the other ideas that just moving from education to skilling, one would talk about creating some kind of centers of excellence. It should not be only about vocational trades. I mean, one should look at how to promote sports. I think our recent performance in the Olympics has been very, very encouraging, right? And some of our best runners, some of our best marathon runners actually come from tribal areas, right? So one has to look at how can we promote the most backward regions to come into the mainstream. You can create centers of excellence around performing arts. And I think we have to break away from that mindset. And the NEP talks about it, that education doesn't only have to be about academic subjects. It should be more holistic, right? Ultimately, it is about enabling the youth to, achieve their aspirations, fulfill their potential. So let it be about sports, let it be about performing arts, let it be about, technology, innovation, whatever be it, right? So I think in this budget, they have made a lot of commitments around upgrading CapEx. But I think this is the kind of CapEx that really needs to come out on the ground, which will really make a difference. And of course, I would want to wrap up with a few thoughts around how we are trying to create, unique livelihood models. So, one example that I would like to share, something very interesting we've done in West Bengal. We have got beneficiaries who, are drivers, and we are actually creating a model where we have linked them, we've linked to a government scheme which funds entrepreneurs, right? Or actually gives a capital subsidy or an interest subsidy. And through that financial instrument, we've taken a loan for the beneficiary. The loan obviously gets highly subsidized. Through that loan, the beneficiary acquires an electric vehicle for deliveries. And on the other hand, we've tied up with your e-commerce majors like Shadowfax, Big Basket, Flipkart, etc., to get them a minimum number of commitments on a monthly basis. So which means that now this beneficiary becomes an asset owner, has a market linkage where he knows that he can utilize the vehicle for X number of deliveries, get to a break-even point, pay his EMIs, and still take an income home, right? And that model has actually created a wow, with the stakeholders there, saying that it's a win-win for everyone at the end of the day. And of course, we as a private sector facilitator are we are trying to link our payments or our fees to an outcome. That once you achieve this, it's more like an impact funding model that one can think about, right? And we've taken off the ground, I think, if I'm not wrong, probably about 50 to 100 vehicles are on the ground, and the plan is to scale it up to about 300. And based on the West Bengal pilot, we would probably want to do it in more states, right? But there is a scope for a lot of innovation around business models, around the way government funds are spent. In one of the states, I don't want to name, but we saw that their CM, they have a CM fund for employment guarantee, right? And the target over a 5-year period was to benefit some 1 lakh beneficiaries. We looked at the current status report. After 3 years, all they have got to is helping 8,000 entrepreneurs, right? And we actually were wondering that why this 8,000 vis-a-vis such an ambitious target. And what we found out was there have been more than 90,000 to a lakh applicants for that scheme. However, more than 90,000 of them have actually been rejected by banks because their proposals weren't viable.
Okay.
So, so that actually led us to the idea that, why can't we play the role of a facilitator, help these entrepreneurs create viable plans, maybe be that one step in between to, be a filter to give them feedback and help them get that loan. That's where that role of, mentoring, coaching, or whatever kind of business facilitation that can come in. And the private sector and entrepreneurs are the best place to. I totally agree with your philosophy that it can never be just government or CSR or private sector. I think it's the convergence of all the stakeholders, right? And that's when you can create scalable impact. That's an idea that I'm wedded to. It's been my career objective in a way. I've always felt excited about doing work which can create that impact at scale. So Ampersand, offers that. That was the most exciting aspect about joining this organization, that at its very core, it's trying to solve some of the, the biggest problems that are there to solve. Right. And one can be a part of that journey.
Rightly said. Collaboration is key and very effective when it comes to achieving meaningful outcomes. With this, we end our conversation today. Thank you so much, Amit, for your time and such valuable insights. Ampersand Group is doing great work, and we all hope to see a brighter future for the education sector in India.
So wish you all the best with Josh Community Talks to do more such work, and would love to interact with you on many other topics.